Did you ever think about mental health back then?
No, not at all.
I just think it needs to be open and not something that's shied away from.
I learned how to be a survivor and how to be resilient, but at that age, you shouldn't have to.
And that's where this gap starts, being created.
What were your daily concerns as you were growing up, especially during your teenage years?
That's an interesting question because I grew up in South Africa under a state of apartheid. So being of a different skin color in a country that was against that, it was very difficult growing up in that community, being a second-class citizen.
Did you ever think about mental health back then? Like, did it cross your mind what mental health
No,
was?
not really. We were trying to stay alive
Okay.
and try to not be beaten down by the society around us.
I had to watch my mother struggle to provide for 4 children on her own. We spent many days without food, without lights, and I would do homework by candlelight because my mother could no longer afford all of the bills on her own. And so through that, I learned how to be a survivor and how to be resilient. But at that age, you shouldn't have to.
My dad, whenever he had conflict or he was upset, he would just get very, very quiet. And my mom she would really didn't say anything either.
Did you ever think about mental health back then?
No, not at all.
There was a time period where my mom definitely was going through a depression, but we didn't have the words for what that was.
I was confused a lot. Mom and dad weren't really there. They worked a lot. Didn't have anything or anyone that I could process things off of.
There wasn't the words that we have today to describe what that was.
I don't even remember, honestly, having a high school counselor that was available to us like the schools do nowadays.
If I looked at the way my parents approached it, it was always like, oh, you're just being lazy when you feel depressed and withdrawn. Or, you know what, we'll just pray for you and you'll snap out of it.
You pushed on. You talked to your friends. You couldn't talk to your parents. You cried, you screamed, but you just hung out with your friends and you talked to them. If it got really bad, you had to take it upon yourself to make yourself feel better and find help on your own.
For your own mental health, how would you describe it?
Secretive, I guess. We can't always rely on the people around us because sometimes they can betray you and hurt you in more ways than one, and you just have to find that one person that you can rely on. But it's definitely social media and school, and just how mean the kids can be is definitely really hard for kids our age.
That's actually kind of what brought me here, is I wanted to be here for people who can't be here anymore. One of my close friends in 8th grade actually took his life. And then later that school year, a different boy in our grade took his life as well. So I've kind of just always been surrounded by it, especially at an early age.
And so when it comes to mental health, is it a subject that you can talk about with your parents easily? And if so, what might that conversation look like?
So for me, I struggle with that, and something I like to express my feelings and thoughts through is music. And I found this one song that just really connected and explained kind of perfectly how I felt. And I just kind of told my parents to take a listen to it. And that it really resonated with me, and I think that really helped talk about it without having to talk about it.
Okay, and how did they respond to that?
My mother actually hugged me crying, and so I think they were just shocked by it.
Okay.
Mental health to me means something completely different than when I was growing up. Because of my daughter. In this day and age, with everything that is going on, I think mental health is something that needs to be discussed at the dinner table, in the car when you're driving to and from school or athletics, anything.
As a single mom of a young Black boy, it's something I think about all day, every day. Every decision I'm forced to make is because I am harboring his best interest at heart and because I'm fully aware of what he's going to have to deal with as a young Black man in America.
There are kids out there at this generation that don't want to talk to their parents. Why? Their parents don't understand. They're too busy. I don't want to bother them, right? And, we don't actually sit together as a family to share a meal or share a conversation. And that's where this gap starts, being created. But not every parent tunes into that. So at this stage, when my kids, they still bottle up, they still go, but you just won't understand. But because of what we've personally been through, they are more open to talking to us about their experiences.
How hopeful are you about the future and having a community that can talk openly about mental health?
I think I'm pretty hopeful. I feel like there's been a significant difference in between how teenagers are approaching it compared to how older people have approached it. They're not as open as to talking about it as we are.
So you can definitely see a generational difference.
Definitely, yeah.
In my generation, there's a little bit of confusion as to where do I support, and maybe I should talk to my kid more, or maybe I should just stand back and just let them figure it out. When it comes to my own children and the whole idea of mental health and how it's looked at these days, my biggest concern is them having better access to mental health providers.
So is there anything that you'd like to say to your child if your child was sitting here?
No matter what the situation is, no matter what difficult thoughts she's having, that it is always okay and that we'll work through it together. And I would want her to know that she's incredibly loved.